Pierre, Kyle, and Dan with some massive news from the NHL. Macklin Celebrini, an historic contract with the San Jose Sharks, 5 years, $94 million. It carries an $18.8 million average annual value, is the most for any NHL player. Pierre, your hot thoughts off the top.
First of all, Pat Brisson is the agent for, Macklin Celebrini. Pat Brisson is not a neophyte when it comes to negotiating monster contracts and unique contracts around the National Hockey League. He's a representative for most top-end players, including one Sidney Crosby. The similarities between Crosby and Celebrini are uncanny and very apparent. And I think this was an easy negotiation for San Jose and Hasso Plattner, their owner, and Mike Greer. Because of what happened with Philadelphia and Anaheim, obviously, on the Leo Carlsson deal. So he goes past Kirill Kaprizov from last year. He goes past Leo Carlsson for this year. And Macklin Celebrini is now the highest paid player in the National Hockey League.
Pierre, it seems as though something like this, he had a great year. That's a lot of money given to him very quickly. If you're a Maple Leaf like Gavin McKenna, you must be frothing at the mouth seeing this, seeing how quickly you can move into the big money if this is the way the league is going.
Yeah, and Macklin Celebrini still has to play one more year on entry level, so he's not going to get that money this year. He's going to get it after this year. But you're absolutely right, Colin. I think the biggest thing is if you were to take a wager, who's got the better supporting cast coming in the NHL? Was it Macklin Celebrini, a rebuilding and really undermanned San Jose team, or is it going to be Gavin McKenna with the potential to play with Austin Matthews, put up huge power play points with Matthews and obviously Nylander and maybe Tavares on that first power play unit in Toronto, along with Darren Radish and his big shot? You can make the argument that Gavin McKinnon might have better numbers just because of the players that are around him. And if that's the case, this is going to have long-term implications for many young players in the league, including Gavin McKinnon. The one thing, and I said it to you guys before, and I'm going to say it again, I don't have a problem with what Philadelphia did by trying to get Leo Carlsson. I completely and utterly understand it. But this is the whiplash effect of that try by Philadelphia to get Leo Carlsson on a restricted free agent contract offer sheet, and obviously it didn't work, and now we're seeing the payback for the rest of the league.
The current CBA runs from 2020, runs through the 29-30 season. Yep. Pierre, whenever I see contracts like this, I hearken back to the first work stoppage where it was you had the high-end guys and a few in the middle, and then your low-end guys. And there was just too much of a discrepancy, and that's how it led to a lockout. And whenever I see a big contract like this, I go back to that. I'm like, we're going to be stuck with a few high-end guys and then everyone at the bottom.
There's not going to be a huge middle class, that's for sure. One of the things that's hopefully going to happen for the players, and I'm more on the player side in this, is that we're going to have expansion. Now, the players won't share in the expansion fees. That's not hockey-related revenue, but it will lead to more jobs, and it will lead to more guys that maybe are middle-class type players getting bumped up because they're going to be in an elevated status just because teams are going to need players that can play at the NHL level. But you're absolutely right, Dan. You're not wrong on that assessment. The one thing that needs to be remembered by everybody before they all go losing their minds, escrow is still a very real part of this. So if the league's not putting up the financial numbers that they need to, those players, while it's being reported, they're going to get 17 or 18 or 18.5 million. They may not, because escrow will kick in if the formulas aren't working out.
Yeah, Pierre, that's what I was going to ask you about. It seems as though over the last couple of years, while the league is doing well and it's had many successes, growth rate has been marginal, positive, of course, but it seems as though salaries at the high end right now are absolutely outpacing the league's revenue growth. And we all know where that leads. And Dan just mentioned it, and that leads to work stoppages.
It does. There's one little thing that's not getting enough publicity right now. Maybe we'll break some news here on Toronto Sports Rush. The European component to this is pretty substantial. The league has opened a full-time office in Zurich. They want to really explore the opportunity to maybe have a European division, which will lead to, again, more jobs, more money, the potential for more growth. And it's really important to remember 20 games this year, 20, will be played in daytime so that they can start to get European eyeballs to watch games at a reasonable hour in the day. I think that's all part of what you're speaking about, Kyle. I think that's the league's position in terms of how to grow the revenue streams so that they can afford these contracts.
Looking at players that are still available out there, and I stumbled across a former Leaf that is still unsigned, Michael Bunting.
Yep.
He ever comes back?
I have a hard time thinking he'd come back to Toronto. I could maybe see the potential for him to go to a place like Pittsburgh where Kyle Dubas is and Wes Jarvis is, and I know they like him a fair bit. I do think he'll be playing this year. I do think he'll have a job sooner rather than later. A lot
His
of
two best years were with the Leafs.
no question about it. And Dubas was there for those 2 great years. So you're not wrong on that. Here's just something to think about. Now we're in the season of the U20 tournament going on in the summer. We're also getting ready for the Gretzky Holinka, which is taking place in Edmonton next week. So a lot of the key decision makers are mobile, if you know what I mean. I know they have phones and I know they can do stuff through the internet and all that, but they're mobile and their focus is on other things. So we may see a little bit of a dead spot now in terms of what happens in the league, but I do think things will start to pick up after the Holinka ends next weekend.
Okay, Pierre. So focusing back in on the Toronto Maple Leafs roster as it is, after the disaster that was last season and the whirlwind that has been this offseason, how important is a fast start to this team, all things considered?
Really important because of the neighborhood that they're in. I expect Florida's going to start well. I expect Tampa's going to start well. I expect Montreal is going to start well. And I expect Buffalo is going to start well. That's 4 teams. So if you want to be in the hunt, and I think 5 teams are going to make it from that division, from the Atlantic, Toronto's got to be in that fast start kind of a mode. I don't know what's going to happen with Ottawa. Don't have a good feel for what's going to go on in Detroit. I think both those situations are really precarious right now because of off-season stuff that's happened both in Ottawa and in Detroit. So we'll see, but the neighborhood's tough, and if you don't get off to a good start, I think it's going to be very difficult to make a push later on in the year.
And Pierre, lastly, if you're the Leafs and you've got a last-minute shopping list, aside from the milk, what's the one thing you still need at the store?
Boy, I'd like to see that right side of the defense get a little bit more stout, so to speak, and insulate the position in case Tanev does go down. I think if they can do that, I think it's going to be good. They have more than enough firepower, and I think the addition to Radish on the power play is going to open up so much creativity for Nylander, for McKenna, and for Matthews in particular, and potentially Tavares. But I think if they can't get stopping power on the back end, especially on the right side, I think that's a bit of an issue.
By the way, if you ever wonder if you need milk when you're at the grocery store, you always need milk.
Just get more.
Second guess it.
Just reach to the back and get the best date, Dan. That's all.
Yes.
You just right at the very back. Pierre, you just mentioned something I just want to ask you about very quickly. You mentioned with Radish being added to the blue line. Obviously, the offensive performance of the Leafs wasn't good enough last year, but the truth is, without a power like a true scoring defenseman out on the ice, the zone play was never really stretched out and the puck was never moved back to the blue line in any sort of threatening way. Will that free up space for the offensive minded players, or the forwards more specifically, to actually play their game more in depth and get the puck in the net more often now that there's actually a threat at the blue line to score?
Yeah, I think it's going to help the power play a lot, number one. Number two, what Darren Radish does, it's underappreciated. He's a very good tape-to-tape passer. The Leafs were an easy team to forecheck last year because most of their defensemen just rimmed the puck around the wall. Well, if you're drawing up a game plan to play Toronto last year, you're forechecking inside out and you're taking the walls away. That's a tough way to play if you're a forward, a high-skill forward for Toronto, because you're always up against the plexiglass. Now it's going to be a little bit different. Neil Andre is a good tape-to-tape guy. Oliver Ekman-Larsson's a good tape-to-tape guy. Darren Rash a good tape-to-tape. Like, they've got components to make it better. So the answer is yes, and it's really going to help on the power play.
All right, let's go have ourselves a Wednesday.
No, 1 degree, Pierre McGuire.
Oh, yeah, quick. 1 degree, Pierre McGuire. Darnell Nurse. That's a real tough one.
That's a very high-ended contract for a real good player out in the Ontario Hockey League. Obviously, Sault Ste. Marie Greyhound. He's been in the Stanley Cup final 2 times. So Darnell Nurse, very talented kid, very bigger than what you see on the ice. He's a big, physical, strong kid, elite skater, Hockey sense could be a little bit better. But that being said, he's had a tremendous career so far. He really has. It's not his fault his contract's that big. If all of us would take that contract, every single one of us.
And one of the most athletic families on earth,
Yes.
even considering his uncle, who I worked with, Donovan McNabb.
That's a pretty good, talented quarterback out of Syracuse University, old Donovan McNabb.
Yeah, Donovan went to his draft and he came. He's like, yeah, those are hockey players. They know how to party.
A fact.
See ya.
Bye.